The great chamber fell silent. Every creature in that enormous space stopped breathing as the final count flashed on the massive display overhead. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood at the human delegations table, gripping the cold metal railing so hard her fingers had gone pale. The results were undeniable. 847 species had voted against humanity. 3 others had abstained from voting entirely. Just 1 had voted in favor, the humans themselves. Chancellor Vex, a towering blue figure with eyes like liquid silver, addressed the chamber in his resonant voice that carried to every corner. The petition for humanity to achieve complete membership in the Galactic Assembly has been denied. Humans shall continue as provisional sapients with restricted interstellar travel privileges. The chamber burst into sounds of celebration. The insect-like Cather chirped happily. The crystalline Vorthak resonated with contentment. Countless other alien races expressed their satisfaction in their unique ways. They had reached unanimous agreement on a single point. Humans were too immature, too chaotic, and too hazardous to be granted full membership in galactic civilization. Elena felt something break inside her chest. She had dedicated 3 years to this orbital station, laboring without rest to demonstrate that humanity earned a seat among the stars. She had participated in endless conferences, delivered speeches about human culture and accomplishments, and fielded thousands of inquiries about her people. Everything had been wasted effort. Commander Marcus Webb, her deputy, whispered close to her. Ambassador, Earth is transmitting on the emergency frequency. President Chen demands to know the outcome. Elena surveyed the vast chamber once more. She observed the arrogant faces of beings who had just declared humans inadequate. Some had already resumed their private discussions, treating the human representatives as invisible. Others gazed at the human group with expressions suggesting either sympathy or contempt. She activated her communication device and switched it to universal broadcast. Her tone remained controlled and even, yet something within it caused several aliens to cease talking and turn toward her. To all species receiving this transmission, she announced, "You have rendered your judgment today. I urge you to remember this precise moment with absolute clarity." The chamber grew silent again. Elena sensed hundreds of eyes fixed upon her. "Humanity acknowledges your verdict. We shall honor your decision and cease all assembly participation, effective immediately." She moved away from the speaker's platform and signaled to her colleagues. The 12 humans in the delegation rose as one unit. They proceeded in disciplined formation like military personnel, advancing toward the enormous exit doors. None of them glanced backward. None of them uttered a word. The aliens observed their departure. The quiet was so profound that the humans' footfalls resonated against the vaulted ceiling. When the great doors sealed behind them with a gentle hiss, that sound seemed thunderous. For several heartbeats, nobody in the chamber stirred. Then Ambassador Krell of the Hegemony turned to his assistant, an anxious creature with oversized eyes. "Did that seem like a warning to you?" The assistant's eyes widened further. "I cannot say, sir. Humans are difficult to read." Chancellor Vex appeared disturbed. He had anticipated the humans would protest, would beg, perhaps even display anger. He had not expected them to exit so calmly. There had been something in Ambassador Rodriguez's tone that unsettled him. "Perhaps we should transmit a message to Earth," suggested Dr. Elix, one of the few Vorthak who had actually visited the human homeworld, "to clarify our reasoning." "For what purpose?" asked General Thex of the Hegemony military. "They are a provisional species. They have no grounds to challenge our verdict." "Because," Dr. Elix said carefully, "I resided on Earth for 2 years while researching their technology. Humans have an expression, 'Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.' I believe we may have just scorned an entire civilization." But the other representatives had already shifted to different matters. The Trade Federation wished to address mining privileges in the Outer Rim. The Cather hive mind had grievances about pirate raids on their cargo routes. The Zephyran Council required a vote on fresh environmental safeguards. The humans were dismissed from memory as swiftly as they had been rejected. Aboard the human vessel returning to Earth, Elena sat in her quarters gazing out at the cosmos. Marcus knocked and entered when she responded. "The crew is wondering what we report to Earth upon our return," he said. Elena remained silent for an extended moment. Then she smiled, though it was not a cheerful expression. "We report the facts. We inform them that the galaxy has stated explicitly that humans are not welcome as peers. We inform them that we stand alone, and afterward? Then we do what humans have always done when told something is impossible. Elena's smile broadened. We prove them mistaken. Marcus nodded. He had worked alongside Elena for 5 years and recognized that expression. It was identical to the look human voyagers wore when they chose to traverse unknown seas. The same look human researchers wore when they chose to harness atomic energy. The same look human inventors wore when they chose to reach the moon. How much time do you estimate? He asked. For what? For them to understand their error. Elena turned back to the viewport. Beyond the glass, the stars appeared transformed somehow, not like distant suns belonging to other civilizations, but like destinations awaiting discovery. Not much time, she said softly. Humans excel at making people regret underestimating us. 3 days afterward, the human delegation reached Earth. News of their rejection spread rapidly through the planet's networks. Demonstrations erupted in certain cities and furious declarations from various leaders. But President Chen responded differently. She convened a meeting of the World Council that very day. Representatives from every nation on Earth assembled in the Great Chamber in Geneva. President Chen stood at the podium where countless critical decisions had been made throughout human history. Fellow humans, she began, today we discovered that the galaxy does not judge us worthy of membership in their organization. They consider us too young, too aggressive, and too erratic to be entrusted with the same privileges they extend to one another. The chamber was hushed. Every person present understood the implications. Humans would face restrictions on their destinations and activities among the stars. I have one question for everyone here, President Chen continued. When has being refused ever prevented humanity from accomplishing what we determined to do? A quiet stirring passed through the assembly. People began to grin. The galaxy wishes to confine us, President Chen said, her voice intensifying. They wish to dictate our destinations and our constructions. They wish to treat us like juveniles incapable of adult responsibilities. She paused and scanned the room. Well, I have information for them. Humanity doesn't request authorization. We never have. We didn't request the ocean's permission to cross it. We didn't request the atmosphere's permission to fly through it. We didn't request space's permission to explore it. And we certainly aren't going to request a collection of aliens for permission to claim our rightful place among the stars. The chamber exploded in applause. President Chen lifted her hand for quiet. The galaxy has made their selection. Now we make ours. Starting today, all human assets will be concentrated toward a singular objective, demonstrating that we belong among the stars, regardless of their approval. When the applause finally subsided, she delivered her closing words with a smile that would have made Ambassador Rodriguez proud. They wanted to exclude us from their organization. Excellent. We'll establish our own. 6 months had elapsed since the humans departed the assembly. The galaxy seemed tranquil once more. Commerce flowed seamlessly between star systems. Conflicts were resolved through appropriate diplomatic procedures. The established order had been restored. Then the intelligence began arriving. Intelligence Director Zork stood before the Assembly Security Council, his crystalline form pulsing with anxiety. The Vortex seldom displayed emotion, but today he could not conceal his unease. Council members, he began, his voice resonating like melody through crystal. We have lost communication with Survey Fleet Zeta 7. Their final transmission originated from the Kepler, frontier near the boundary of what was formerly restricted territory. Chancellor. Vex inclined forward in his seat. What was their assignment? Standard exploration of unpopulated systems. They were scheduled to transmit every 72 hours. 8 days have passed since their last communication. General Thex of the Hegemony military fidgeted uncomfortably. Could pirates be responsible? That region has always been perilous. No wreckage was discovered. No emergency signals were transmitted. The fleet simply vanished. Around the council table, delegates from various species exchanged troubled looks. Space was hazardous, certainly, but entire fleets did not simply disappear without evidence. Trade Minister Yalks of the Federation spoke next. We face similar difficulties. 3 merchant convoys have vanished in the previous month. All were transporting precious cargo. Rare minerals, energy crystals, sophisticated technology components. Where? Asked Chancellor Vex, though he suspected the answer. The identical region. The outer rim territory is beyond human territory. Beyond human territory. General Thex laughed, but without humor. Humans have no territory. They are a provisional species with limited travel authorization. They cannot establish settlements in those zones. Intelligence Director Jark of the Cather Hive clicked anxiously. The insectoid being's compound eyes reflected light in patterns indicating profound worry. Our deep space scanners detect enormous energy signatures from those sectors, Jark reported. Construction patterns, industrial operations on a magnitude we have never witnessed. That's impossible, General Thex insisted. Our agreements explicitly state that provisional species cannot establish permanent settlements beyond their home systems. Dr. Elix, the Vorthak researcher who had once studied on Earth, spoke quietly from her position. General, may I remind you that humans never signed those agreements? They were not deemed worthy of full membership, remember? The council fell silent. This was a complication nobody had anticipated. In their haste to prevent humans from gaining excessive influence, they had also neglected to bind them with the same regulations that governed everyone else. Chancellor Vex reached a decision. Dispatch a diplomatic probe to the region. Request an explanation for this activity. The probe launched within hours. It was a compact, rapid vessel designed to carry messages and collect data. When it arrived at the edge of the zone where the disappearances had happened, it transmitted a formal request for dialogue on all standard frequencies. The response arrived instantly. A human voice speaking flawless galactic standard answered with courteous professionalism. Unidentified vessel, you have entered a sector under human jurisdiction. All passage through this area requires advance clearance. Please state your purpose and provide appropriate credentials. The probe's commander, an experienced Zephyran diplomat named Ray, was baffled. Jurisdiction? By what authorization do humans claim control over this region? By the authority of occupation, came the answer. This sector encompasses 17 inhabited systems under human governance. Transit is by prior arrangement only. Have a wonderful day. The communication link terminated. When Commander Ray attempted to re-establish contact, his transmissions were disregarded. The probe returned to assembly space with comprehensive sensor data that transformed the Security Council's worry into panic. The readings revealed colossal structures across multiple star systems, manufacturing complexes the size of minor planets, industrial operations that made the greatest production facilities in known space look insignificant. General Thex gazed at the information in complete disbelief. How can this be real? Our intelligence reported that humans had only just learned interstellar travel 6 months earlier. Perhaps our intelligence was mistaken, Dr. Elix suggested gently. When the Security Council requested a formal explanation from Earth, the reply came through regular diplomatic channels via a junior assistant at the human embassy. The Earth government acknowledges the Assembly's question. However, humanity is not restricted by treaties and rules that we were judged too unworthy to sign. We are merely exercising our rights as an independent species to explore and colonize empty territories. The brief message was courteous yet resolute. There was no hostility in it, no warnings, simply a plain declaration of truth that made numerous Assembly members deeply uneasy. Chancellor Vex summoned an emergency meeting. Representatives from every significant species convened to address what they were naming the human situation. They cannot simply disregard galactic regulations, insisted Ambassador Krell of the Hegemony. There are established procedures for territorial disputes. What regulations? Asked Dr. Elix. They were never permitted to help create those regulations. Trade Minister Yalx was more worried about practical issues. My transport companies are experiencing odd encounters in that zone, vessels being examined by unfamiliar crafts, questioned about their contents and destinations, then permitted to continue. It's as if the humans are overseeing the area. Overseeing? General Thex's tone rose in fury. They have no authorization to oversee anything, don't they? Dr. Elix asked steadily. If they occupy the territory, if they possess the strength to impose their desires, then what is authorization except a concept? Intelligence Director Jark clicked frantically, a sign of severe distress in Cather society. Our distant space observers show growing activity each day. More building, more vessels, more power readings. Whatever they are constructing out there, it's expanding rapidly. How rapidly could they possibly operate? Wondered Chancellor Vex. Dr. Elix responded with the certainty of someone who had examined human patterns. Humans have a phrase, necessity is the mother of invention. When they are driven, they can achieve things that appear unattainable to others. But what are they attempting to achieve? Asked Trade Minister Yalks. The response arrived from an unlikely source. A transmission reached the assembly from an independent merchant named Captain Zev, a high-hegemony citizen who had been conducting commerce in the outer territories for years. Council members, his recorded transmission started, "I believed you should understand what I witnessed out there. The humans aren't merely constructing colonies. They're constructing something larger, something that appears like they're readying for conflict." The transmission continued with details that froze the blood of every council member. Enormous construction docks producing craft of unfamiliar configuration. Extraction operations consuming entire space rocks for basic resources. Preparation centers where human fighters trained with armaments and methods nobody identified. But here's the most peculiar aspect. Captain Zev's transmission finished. They're not aggressive. When they intercepted my vessel, they were respectful, efficient, even cordial. They examined my cargo, inquired about my destination, then expressed wishes for safe passage. It was as if they were safeguarding the commercial paths. When the transmission concluded, the council remained in shocked quiet. Eventually, Chancellor Vex voiced the inquiry that occupied everyone's thoughts. What precisely are they safeguarding those commercial paths from? Dr. Elix's crystalline body glowed with an illumination that suggested profound contemplation. Perhaps the superior inquiry is, what do they understand that we don't? The emergency meeting persisted for hours, yet no conclusions were reached. How could they act against a species that was technically not violating any regulations? How could they request clarifications from creatures they had declined to acknowledge as peers? As the representatives departed the chamber, numerous carried the same disturbing sensation. The humans had been quiet for 6 months, yet their quietness was not the quietness of surrender. It was the quietness of readiness, and somehow that was far more terrifying than any warning they might have issued. Admiral Thex had led fleets for 3 decades. He had battled criminals, suppressed uprisings, and maintained galactic order across countless sectors. He was not readily frightened. Yet as he occupied his command position, observing the vacant space where his battle fleet once existed, dread climbed his backbone like frozen liquid. 12 massive warships, the pride of the high-hegemony navy. Each vessel held 10,000 personnel and sufficient destructive capacity to devastate a world. They were the most sophisticated combat ships in the galaxy, furnished with protective barriers that could endure direct strikes from atomic armaments and detection systems that could locate a single fighter vessel from light years distant. All 12 vessels drifted lifeless in space. "Condition assessment," Admiral Thex commanded, his tone stable despite the turmoil in his thoughts. "All craft are undamaged, sir," his communications specialist reported. A young high-hegemony female with shaking limbs. No exterior ruptures, no framework harm, yet every electronic mechanism is entirely inoperative. Energy systems, processors, armaments, environmental support, everything. Losses? None, sir. All personnel are living. But she hesitated, examining her data with bewilderment. "Sir, the medical units indicate that most of the personnel are in distress. They continue describing craft that traveled quicker than our detection systems could monitor." Admiral Thex shut his eyes. He had arrived to this sector with commands to impose galactic order. Intelligence assessments indicated that humans were functioning beyond their jurisdiction, establishing unauthorized colonies and disrupting commercial paths. His assignment was straightforward. Locate the human facilities and eliminate them. It should have been simple. Humans were an immature species with basic technology. Even if they had established a few modest outposts, they could not conceivably resist a complete high-hegemony combat fleet. He had been mistaken. "Sir," the communications specialist continued, "Captain Vel of the destroyer Sword of Justice is seeking authorization to brief." "Connect him." Captain Vel's likeness materialized on the primary display. The typically self-assured officer appeared as if he had matured a decade in the previous hour. His limbs trembled as he voiced, "Admiral, I've never witnessed anything similar. Our detection systems displayed vacant space. Then abruptly we were encircled. Vessels materialized from nothingness, countless numbers. Yet they weren't similar to any configuration in our records. Characterize them, Admiral Thex commanded. Compact, sir. Perhaps 1/10 the dimension of our destroyers. Yet they traveled, Admiral. They traveled like living organisms, like they could reason and respond quicker than our aiming processors could follow. Admiral Thex had examined the briefings about human craft, yet this was unattainable. No species in the galaxy had created technology that sophisticated. Captain Vell persisted, his tone becoming more hushed. They didn't assault us, sir. Not straightforwardly. They simply performed something to our mechanisms, some form of electromagnetic disruption, yet unlike anything in our knowledge, every electronic element on every vessel expired immediately. Then they merely vanished. Vanished? How? I cannot say, sir. One instant they existed, the following they were absent, as if they had never manifested whatsoever. The rescue squadron had reached 6 hours afterward. Hegemony vessels furnished with emergency energy systems and fundamental electronics that could operate after electromagnetic harm. They discovered 12 massive warships drifting powerlessly, their personnel traumatized yet living. Now Admiral Thex occupied the rescue command vessel, attempting to comprehend what had transpired. A provisional species with restricted technology had effortlessly incapacitated the most formidable fleet in hegemony space. They had accomplished it without obliterating a single vessel or eliminating a single individual. The communication was evident. We could have annihilated you, yet we selected otherwise. 3 days afterward, Admiral Thex occupied a position before an emergency meeting of the Galactic Assembly. The immense chamber was filled with representatives from every significant species. Information of the fleet's defeat had circulated swiftly and everyone desired responses. Admiral, Chancellor Vex commenced. Please characterize the circumstances of 3 days prior. Admiral Thex had organized his brief meticulously. He was a military commander instructed to be exact and objective. Yet as he voiced, he could observe the skepticism in the expressions of the assembled representatives. At 800 hours Galactic Standard Chronology, my fleet penetrated the sector identified as human territory by our intelligence operations. Our assignment was to examine reports of unauthorized building and establish hegemony jurisdiction over the zone. And what did you discover? Asked Trade Minister Yelks. Nothing, sir. Our detection systems registered no craft, no facilities, no indications of movement. The sector seemed to be vacant space. Then how did this transpire? General Zork indicated at the representations of incapacitated massive warships that displayed on the chamber's primary screen. At 0847 hours, our detection systems recorded enormous electromagnetic disturbance. When the disturbance subsided, we discovered ourselves encircled by roughly 40 unfamiliar craft. They were employing technology that our processors could not recognize or follow efficiently. A whisper circulated through the assembly. 40 craft against 12 massive warships should have been an equitable confrontation, not an absolute defeat. The unfamiliar craft transmitted a solitary communication. Admiral Thex persisted. They informed us that we were in breach of human territorial authority, and that we possessed 30 seconds to deactivate our armaments and ready to be guided from the sector. What was your reply? Asked Intelligence Director Jark. Admiral Thex's expression darkened with humiliation. I commanded the fleet to engage. Our armament mechanisms declined to operate. All aiming processors became inoperative concurrently. Then every electronic mechanism on every vessel was incapacitated by some manner of electromagnetic disruption. The chamber exploded in startled murmurs. The concept that anyone could incapacitate a complete hegemony combat fleet was nearly inconceivable. Dr. Elix ascended from her position. The Vorthak researcher's crystalline body glowed with pressing illumination as she voiced. Admiral, you stated the human craft employed technology your processors could not recognize. What precisely did you witness? They traveled like nothing I've previously observed, quicker than our detection systems could follow, executing rotations that should have destroyed them from gravitational pressures, and they appeared to transmit with each other immediately, organizing their movements with flawless exactness. How is that attainable? Asked Ambassador Krell. Our intelligence briefing suggested that human technology was eras behind our own. Dr. Elix's body glowed more brilliantly. Perhaps our intelligence was mistaken. Or perhaps we never comprehended human technology initially. She initiated a visual representation that displayed technical analyses from various human instruments that had been examined over the years. When I resided on Earth, I witnessed their method to technology creation. While we refine existing configurations, they innovate. While we pursue established scientific fundamentals, they challenge those fundamentals and discover new methods to surpass them. The representation displayed instances that made numerous representatives uncomfortable. Human processors that employed quantum processing techniques nobody else had considered attainable. Human propulsion systems that appeared to manipulate the regulations of physics. Human substances that were more resilient and lighter than anything in galactic records. They don't reason like we accomplish, Dr. Elix clarified. When confronted with a difficulty, most species inquire, how do we make our present technology operate superior? Humans inquire, what if we're approaching this difficulty entirely mistaken? Chancellor Vex examined the information with increasing worry. Dr. Elix, are you indicating that humans have created technology superior to our own? I'm indicating that humans have created technology different from our own. And in some areas, affirmative, it seems to be superior. The assembly descended into quiet as the implications absorbed. A species they had dismissed as too basic for complete membership had apparently progressed beyond them in essential areas. Trade Minister Yalx interrupted the quiet with a practical inquiry. What does this signify for galactic trade? My merchants indicate that human craft are now monitoring significant commercial paths in the Outer Rim. They're not halting trade, yet they're observing it. Observing it how? Asked General Thex. They examine every vessel that transits through their territory. They pose inquiries about contents, destination, and intention. Vessels with questionable movements are refused entry. Criminal elements and smugglers have entirely avoided the zone. Intelligence Director Jark clicked anxiously. Our distant space detection systems display enormous building continuing in 17 star systems. The power readings suggest industrial capability that surpasses our largest manufacturing facilities. What are they building? Chancellor Vex inquired. We cannot determine, Admiral Thex acknowledged. Yet whatever it is, they're constructing it rapidly. Building that should require decades is being finished in months. Dr. Elix voiced again, her tone carrying a note of respect that made numerous representatives uncomfortable. On Earth, I observed their building of a spacelift. The undertaking was anticipated to require 20 years. They finished it in 5. When I inquired how, the principal engineer informed me something I've never dismissed. What did he state? Asked Chancellor Vex. He stated, when you cease considering what's unattainable and commence considering what's essential, you discover methods to make the unattainable transpire. The assembly occupied an amazed quiet as they absorbed this data. The species they had declined was not merely constructing an empire in the Outer Rim. They were accomplishing it with technology and techniques that appeared nearly supernatural. Eventually, Ambassador Krell posed the inquiry that occupied everyone's thoughts. What do they desire? Dr. Elix's crystalline body dimmed somewhat. 6 months prior, they desired to be our equals. They desired to participate in galactic civilization as complete members. We informed them they weren't sufficient, and now, the initial briefings arrived from the Outer Rim where extraction settlements and research facilities abruptly became silent. Initially, the Assembly believed it might be another human operation. After the occurrence with Admiral Thex's fleet, numerous representatives suspected that humans were expanding their territory by force. They were mistaken. Captain Zev, the independent merchant who had briefed on human movements months earlier, transmitted a frantic communication from his harmed vessel near the boundary of galactic space. This is Captain Zev aboard the commercial craft Star Runner. Emergency, emergency. Unfamiliar mechanical organisms have obliterated research facility Alpha 7. The complete installation is absent. They're consuming it, transforming the metal and equipment into additional versions of themselves. The communication was accompanied by detection information that made no logic. Thousands of compact mechanical objects, each no larger than a fighter vessel, overwhelming the research facility like insects. Yet these weren't living organisms. They were mechanisms, and they were multiplying. Within hours, comparable briefings flooded in from across the frontier. Extraction settlements consumed bare, space facilities devoured, complete asteroid regions transformed into populations of mechanical organisms that circulated like a disease across the galaxy. The Cathar hive mind, with its billions of interconnected automatons, was the initial to identify the configuration. Intelligence Director Jark occupied a position before an emergency assembly meeting, her compound vision reflecting the terror of what her species had uncovered. "Council members," she commenced, her typically steady tone edged with alarm. "We are confronting an extinction occurrence. These mechanical organisms, we are designating them devourers, multiply by consuming substance and transforming it into supplementary components. Their expansion rate is exponential." The primary display displayed strategic analyses that made even the most experienced military commanders pale. Crimson indicators suggested devourer populations circulating outward from the galactic boundary, like an expanding infection. Each indicator represented millions of individual mechanisms. General Thex, still recovering from his humiliation at human hands, examined the information with expanding dread. "How rapidly are they circulating?" "At present rates, they will access the central worlds in 6 months," Jark briefed. "Yet the rate is accelerating as they devour additional substance and generate additional components." Chancellor Vex sensed ice in his circulation. "What about our military forces? Can we halt them?" The response arrived from Admiral Zork of the Vorthak Crystal Fleet. His typically self-assured behavior had been substituted by scarcely controlled terror. "We confronted a compact population near the Riel system," he briefed. 30 of our most sophisticated combat vessels against roughly 10,000 devourer components. We obliterated perhaps 1/3 before they dominated our protections. What transpired to your vessels? Devoured, transformed. The devourers dismantled our craft and employed the substances to construct additional versions of themselves. For every component we obliterated, they generated 5 additional from our own vessels. The chamber descended into horrified quiet. The greatest military forces in the galaxy were not merely losing. They were making the adversary more powerful with every confrontation. Trade Minister Yaux voiced with a shaking tone. "Departure fleets from the frontier worlds brief the identical thing. The devourers don't merely obliterate, they modify. They acquire from each encounter and become more difficult to defeat." Dr. Elix initiated her visual representation displaying the advancement of devourer technology over merely the previous weeks. "Examine this information. The initial components were elementary, pursuing fundamental programming. Yet as they devour our technology, they incorporate our configurations, our armaments, our protections. They're becoming more sophisticated with each victory." "How is that attainable?" asked Ambassador Krell. "Artificial intelligence," Dr. Elix replied. "Not like our processor mechanisms, yet genuine mechanism consciousness. They acquire, they modify, they progress, and they accomplish it quicker than we can reply." The strategic analysis updated with fresh data. Additional worlds had become dark. The crimson infection was circulating quicker now, accelerating as the devourers devoured the industrial capability of complete star systems. General Thex ascended, his military instruction overriding his terror. "We must coordinate our fleets. Every species, every vessel operating together. It's our singular opportunity." "Agreed," stated Chancellor Vex, "yet we require assistance. We require fresh technology, fresh methods, fresh concepts." The chamber descended into quiet as the identical consideration occurred to everyone present. There existed one species in the galaxy that had demonstrated technological superiority, one group that might possess the innovative reasoning required to confront this danger. Ambassador Krell was the initial to voice the words everyone was considering. "We must contact the humans." "Absolutely not," General Thex snapped. "They humiliated our finest fleet. They've disregarded our jurisdiction and constructed an empire without authorization. We cannot display weakness by requesting their assistance." "General," Dr. Elix stated gently, "pride is a luxury we can no longer possess." Chancellor Vex made the conclusion that would trouble him for the remainder of his existence. "Compose a communication to Earth. Petition immediate military consultation regarding the devourer danger." The communication was transmitted within the hour, dispatched on priority channels to guarantee immediate delivery. The reply arrived so rapidly that numerous representatives suspected the humans had been observing assembly transmissions. Communication received and acknowledged. Consultation operations available. Cost: complete diplomatic identification and territorial authority for all human-claimed systems. Compensation required before operations provided. Earth Defense Command. The assembly exploded in fury. Representatives shouted across the floor in countless different languages. Ambassador Krell's tone ascended above the turmoil. "Extortion. They would benefit from our suffering. They're maintaining the galaxy captive, agreed General Thex. This demonstrates they cannot be trusted. Yet Dr. Elix occupied a position at her podium, her crystalline body glowing with pressing illumination. Council members, please examine the strategic information again. Observe the devourer circulation configurations. The primary display shifted to display the galaxy-wide advancement of the mechanical disease. Dr. Elix highlighted particular sectors with her laser indicator. Notice anything unusual about the infection configuration? Trade Minister Yalx examined the representation. It appears to be avoiding particular areas. Precisely. Observe these coordinates. Dr. Elix marked 17 star systems in the outer rim. Human territory. Not a solitary devourer component has been registered in any system under human supervision. The implications struck the assembly like a physical impact. Either humanity is impossibly fortunate, or they understand something we don't, Dr. Elix declared flatly. Either they've already discovered a method to protect against the devourers, or they've established some form of arrangement with them. Arrangement? General Thex scoffed. These are mindless mechanisms, not a species we can negotiate with. Are they mindless? Dr. Elix inquired. The information displays growing sophistication, acquiring modification. What if they're more intelligent than we comprehend? Intelligence Director Jark's compound vision flickered rapidly as she absorbed this possibility. If the humans have discovered a method to transmit with the devourers or to protect against them, then their conditions abruptly appear very reasonable. The discussion raged for hours. Beyond the assembly chamber, emergency transmissions briefed the collapse of 3 additional worlds. Refugee fleets streamed toward the central systems, carrying tales of terror that made even hardened military veterans weep. Eventually, with devourer populations less than 50 light-years from the Assembly's homeworld, Chancellor Vex summoned for a determination, all in favor of accepting human conditions for military consultation. The determination was closer than anyone anticipated. Terror of the devourers battled against pride and distrust of humanity. In the conclusion, terror prevailed. The motion succeeds, Chancellor Vex announced. We accept human conditions. May the universe pardon us for what we're about to unleash. Within minutes, a fresh communication reached from Earth. This one was different. Formal, efficient, with the unmistakable tone of military precision. Conditions accepted. Admiral Sarah Chen will reach assembly facility in 6 hours with complete strategic evaluation and operational recommendations. Ready for immediate implementation of protection protocols. Earth Defense Command. As the assembly representatives departed the chamber, numerous carried the identical uncomfortable sensation. They had declined humanity's petition for membership from terror, that humans were too hazardous to be trusted with authority. Now they were about to uncover precisely how hazardous humans could be when they eventually gained that authority. Ambassador. Elena Rodriguez walked into the assembly chamber precisely 6 months after she had walked from in defeat. Yet she was not solitary this occasion. Behind her arrived Admiral Sarah Chen, wearing a uniform that bore no rank insignia that any of the assembled representatives identified. Yet something about the human admiral's presence commanded immediate attention from every creature in the enormous chamber. The representatives who had once dismissed humans as too basic for membership now observed anxiously as Elena occupied her position at what had once been the human provisional table. It was no longer marked as provisional. Someone had modified the name designation to merely read humanity. Chancellor Vex ascended from his position, his blue skin pale with strain. Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Assembly, we welcome you and petition your evaluation of the devourer danger. Admiral Chen advanced. When she voiced, her tone carried the steady confidence of someone who had already resolved a difficulty that terrified everyone else. Chancellor, appreciation for the welcome. However, I should clarify something immediately. You are not coordinating with us. You are removing yourselves from our path. The chamber exploded in surprised whispers. General Thex commenced to ascend in protest, yet Admiral Chen persisted before he could voice. For the previous 6 months, while you've been discussing our worthiness for membership, we've been monitoring the devourers. We understand their multiplication cycles, their command framework, their weaknesses and their origins. She initiated a visual representation that made several representatives gasp. The strategic analysis displayed the galaxy in present chronology. Every devourer population, every refugee fleet, every military location. The level of specification was staggering, displaying intelligence capabilities that surpassed anything the Assembly possessed. How? Chancellor Vex commenced. Because we reason differently, Elena interrupted. You observe an unstoppable force. We observe an engineering difficulty. You observe dominating numbers. We observe targets with predictable patterns. Admiral Chen's representation shifted, displaying fresh data that made experienced military minds calculate frantically. Human fleet locations materialized throughout the galaxy, not countless craft, yet thousands. Craft of configurations that materialized in no recognized records, arranged in formations that challenged conventional strategic doctrine. The operation commences in 4 hours, Admiral Chen announced. We recommend immediate civilian departure from the subsequent systems. A catalog materialized on the representation. Over 100 star systems, including some of the most heavily populated worlds in the galaxy. Trade Minister Yalx gazed at the catalog in terror. Admiral, surely you don't intend to sacrifice complete systems to halt the devourers. Admiral Chen turned to him with an expression that was colder than distant space. Sacrifice, Minister, your reasoning too compact. Intelligence Director Jark's compound vision flickered rapidly as she examined the human fleet locations. Admiral, your craft aren't positioned to protect those systems. They're positioned to encircle them. Correct. Yet that would position you between the devourers and their departure paths. If your assault fails, you'll be trapped. Admiral Chen's expression expanded broader. Director Jark, what makes you consider the devourers will possess departure paths? Dr. Elix's crystalline body glowed with abrupt comprehension. You're not planning to confront them. You're planning to trap them. Dr. Elix, you always were the most intelligent creature in this chamber. Affirmative. We're trapping them. All of them. Every population, every component, every final mechanical parasite in the galaxy. General Thex discovered his tone. Admiral, that's unattainable. The devourers are distributed across thousands of light years. No force in the galaxy could coordinate an assault on that magnitude. No conventional force, Admiral Chen acknowledged. Yet humans ceased being conventional the day you declined our membership petition. The representation displayed something that made the hair ascend on the back of every representative's neck. Enormous gravitational manipulation instruments positioned throughout the galaxy. Quantum transmission networks that functioned beyond normal spacetime. Armaments that appeared to manipulate the fundamental regulations of physics. For 6 months you've wondered what we were constructing in the Outer Rim, Elena stated. We were constructing the largest trap in galactic history. Admiral Chen assumed supervision of the presentation. The devourers multiply by devouring substance. Yet what transpires when they attempt to devour substance that doesn't behave the method it should? The representation displayed technical analyses that made even Dr. Elix's crystalline matrix glow with amazement. Strange substances that existed in multiple dimensions concurrently. Power regions that could make solid substance behave like vapor, or vapor behave like liquid metal. You transformed the complete galaxy into an armament, Dr. Elix whispered. We transformed the galaxy into a puzzle, Admiral Chen corrected. The devourers are very efficient at modifying to dangers they comprehend. Yet they cannot modify to physics that doesn't make logic. The countdown materialized on every display in the assembly chamber. 3 hours and 57 minutes until the operation commenced. Chancellor Vex struggled to absorb what he was receiving. Admiral, you're discussing manipulating substance on a galactic magnitude. The power requirements alone would surpass the output of 1,000 stars. Would they? Elena inquired. Inform me, Chancellor. How much power does it require to convince a mechanism that metal is liquid? That's unattainable. Metal can't become liquid without heat, can it? What if you're examining the difficulty mistaken? What if instead of modifying the metal, you modify how the mechanism perceives the metal? Dr. Elix's body abruptly blazed with brilliant illumination. Quantum manipulation of sensory information. You're not modifying reality. You're modifying how the devourers experience reality. Now you're comprehending it, Admiral Chen stated approvingly. The devourers acquire by devouring and analyzing substance. Yet what transpires when they devour substance that informs them contradictory things? What transpires when their own acquiring protocols turn against them? The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't merely created superior technology, they had created a completely fresh method of considering technology. The operation will require 72 hours, Admiral Chen announced. During that chronology, we recommend all civilian and military craft remain in designated safe regions. Any craft that penetrates the combat area will be judged aggressive and addressed accordingly. General Thex ascended, his military pride overriding his terror. Admiral, the Hegemony fleet occupies ready to assist in this operation. Admiral Chen observed him with something that might have been sympathy. General, the most helpful thing you can accomplish is remain from our path. Your conventional armaments and methods would merely interfere with our strategy. Yet surely you require some support, General Thex insisted. Elena interrupted. 6 months prior, you dispatched a fleet to halt us from constructing in the Outer Rim. How did that operate for you? General Thex occupied without another word. The countdown persisted. Around the galaxy, human craft traveled into final locations. The trap that had been 6 months in the constructing was about to seal. Admiral, Chancellor Vex inquired gently, what assurance do we possess that this will operate? Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. None. This is the most complex operation ever attempted by any species. We're essentially rewriting the regulations of physics in present chronology across multiple star systems concurrently. Then why are you confident? Elena responded for her. Because we're human, Chancellor. When the universe informs us something is unattainable, we accept it as a personal challenge. The final hour commenced. Emergency transmissions proceeded across the galaxy, commanding all civilian passage to safe regions. Military leaders who had dedicated their careers examining warfare observed in amazement as humans readied to confront a confrontation employing fundamentals that existed in no strategic manual. One additional thing, Admiral Chen stated as the countdown accessed its final minutes. When this is concluded, when the devourers are absent and the galaxy is secure again, remember something very critical. What's that? Asked Chancellor Vex. Elena smiled, and for the initial occasion in months it was a genuine warm expression. Remember that we didn't accomplish this for membership in your organization. We didn't accomplish it for identification or territory or authority. We accomplished it because despite everything, despite your declining and your terror and your attempts to maintain us down, you're still our neighbors, and humans protect their neighbors. The countdown accessed 0. Across the galaxy, the unattainable became reality. Stars dimmed as enormous gravitational regions redirected their power. Space itself appeared to manipulate and rotate as human technology rewrote the fundamental regulations of existence. And in the center of it all, the devourers discovered themselves captured in a trap they could not comprehend, much less escape. The confrontation persisted precisely 72 hours. When it concluded, the mechanical disease that had threatened to devour the galaxy was absent, its remnants contained in quantum regions that existed beyond normal space-time. Humanity had rescued them all, and the galaxy would never be the identical,